Welcome, everyone. I now call the October 4th, 2022 regular City Council meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The City of Bothell is now providing the option of attending council meetings remotely or in person. Public comment will be allowed both in writing or verbally. Verbal comments may be taken either in person or remotely. Sign-up sheets were provided online by the City Clerk's office via link from the agenda. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting. If you have called in, we ask that you mute your device so as not to interfere with the meeting. If a participant fails to mute their connection and causes a disruption to the meeting, the connection will be terminated. At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alders?
Here.
Councilmember McNeil?
Here.
Councilmember Mankey?
Here.
Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking, and mute your microphone when not speaking. For council attending remotely, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom when you wish to speak, and I will call on you. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and remember to mute your mic when not speaking. The first item on the agenda is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to presentations, reports, and briefings. And you may have noticed that there was a new name when we called roll. So we are going to administer the oath of office for Amanda Dodd. And just welcome our newly appointed council member to the position. We're whole again. We have 7. And I think this, I just want to say thank you to the King County Council. We all know up here how important it is to work regionally, and sometimes we have to rely on our regional partners for things that we can't get done like this. So a special thank you to them for doing the work to fill this position. All right. Oh, Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Unfortunately, I'm remote tonight. I will not be able to attend the meeting, but I wanted to take the opportunity to again thank the County Council for helping the City of Bothell make the decision on the appointment. I also wanted to welcome the new council member Dodd to the dais with us, and hopefully look forward to working with the new council member and finding great balance for our community. I know based on some of the words that she used today that we will find a way to balance things and do the work that the community looks forward to us doing. So I wanted to just welcome you. I apologize I'm not there in person, but I did want to take the opportunity to welcome you personally, even though I'm not able to attend tonight.
All right, thank you. City Clerk, do we have, we have Judge Rozzano up there? Fantastic.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, sorry for the late sign in. And I swear I'm not always on vacation. Sorry, there's a puppy. Can you hear?
We can hear just fine.
Okay, very good. Just worried that the puppy's barking is too loud.
You know, it's not the only time we've had a disruption here at the council meeting, so we'll roll with it and it'll be fine.
Very good. Are we ready with the...
Just 1 second, Judge. Amanda, if you want to come down in front of the podium there and stand facing the judge, and then we'll be ready for you.
Don't get used to it. You don't get this special attention most of the time.
We're ready, Judge Rozzano.
Okay, very good. Amanda, if you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Amanda Dodd, I can't hear her. Is she speaking?
I could probably go on mic and then you could hear me. I,
There we go.
Amanda Dodd,
Do solemnly swear.
do
or
solemn.
affirm.
I'm so sorry.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
or affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
and ordinances of the city of Bothell,
and ordinances of the city of Bothell,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of city council member of the city of Bothell
perform the duties of the city council member of the city of Bothell
to the best of my abilities.
to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was very quick.
Sorry, Judge?
I said that was very quick, and I'm very appreciative that I got to do this, even though the timing for me was not great as far as my side of it.
Well, thank
And
you.
Amanda, I look forward to meeting you in person at some point.
Well, Judge, thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us and help us with this tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to break for 10 minutes to welcome Councilmember Dodd. It is 6:07. We will be back at 6:17.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right, welcome back. Next up, we have public engagement opportunities. We have the Fire Station 45 open house and ribbon cutting on Saturday, October 15th. You can join the Bothell Fire Department that day for the Fire Prevention open house and ribbon cutting. It'll begin at 9:30 a.m. You can go to bothellwa.gov/Fire Prevention Week to learn more. On October 13th, Bothell pet owners can have their dogs and cats vaccinated for free at the Bothell Police Department. You can register online at bothellwa.gov/petvaccines. And the Wastemobile returns to Bothell. Last time in 2022, you can drop by the UW Bothell campus on October 21st, 22nd, and 23rd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. to safely dispose of unwanted, unused, and old household hazardous waste products. You can learn more at bothellwa.gov/hazmat. All right, next up, we have a proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Week. Whereas, in just one day across the U.S., nearly 75,000 victims of domestic violence sought services from domestic violence programs and shelters. And whereas 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men in our country, including approximately 40% of women and 30% of men in Washington, have experienced severe domestic violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime, and whereas domestic violence crimes comprised of nearly 50% of all crimes that occurred against a person in Washington state and 20% of all homicides, and whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month was launched nationwide in October 1987 as a way to connect and unite individuals and organizations working on domestic violence issues, with much progress made to support victims and survivors, to hold abusers accountable, and to create and update legislation to further these goals. And whereas the impact of domestic violence is wide-ranging, directly affecting individuals and society as a whole here in our community throughout the United States and the world, and whereas racism, homophobia, transphobia, ageism, and discrimination based on physical ability, nationality, or other factors help to perpetuate domestic violence and make finding safety even more difficult for some victims, and whereas preventing domestic violence requires the collective voice of individuals, families, and institutions, each which add a valuable and powerful component to transform our communities. Now therefore, I, Mason Thompson, do hereby proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Bothell, and join with others across Washington and the nation in supporting victims of domestic violence, as well as local programs, state coalitions, national organizations, and other agencies who are committed to increasing public awareness and sending a clear message to abusers that domestic violence is not tolerated in Bothell. And I believe we have Christopher McBride here to accept.
That is correct. Mr. McBride, go ahead if you'd like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor Thompson, for the proclamation. Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County is honored to accept that proclamation. We work throughout the county with survivors of domestic violence, and that work is done through the support of institutions throughout Washington state, including cities such as Bothell. It is an honor to be here, and we thank you, Mayor Thompson. We thank the city council members, city staff, and especially the city of Bothell Police for their efforts in helping survivors find safety in their homes this month and every month of the year. We at Domestic Violence Services provide emergency shelter, legal advocacy, community advocacy, and safety planning with survivors and individuals who have survivors in their life. Those statistics hold true throughout Washington state. It's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men have experienced some form, and then 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 men experience extreme physical abuse at the hands of a partner. And we are here for those survivors, for anybody who might need assistance. Our phone number is 425-252-2873. If anyone needs any help relocating resources in the community, potentially getting to safety. And again, we're very excited to be here and very excited to hear that proclamation. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for coming tonight. All right, next up, I'm going to turn it over to Danae McGee for the introduction of Bob Sulkosky. I tried. I'm sorry if I didn't get it right.
You're fine.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm here tonight to introduce you to Bob Sulkosky. He is the General Manager of Country Inn and Suites here in Bothell. He's here for consideration of the open position on Bothell's Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. And this is the committee that advises council on the hotel motel tax funds that come in through the city through our 9 hotels. This committee is restricted, which means that it must consist of an elected council member, which in this case is Councilmember Zorns, and at least 2 recipients of the tax and at least 2 collectors on the tax. The collectors are our 9 hotels, which is why Bob is eligible for this position. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to Bob so he can answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or evening, I guess it is. So what are your questions?
Councilmember Zorns.
I don't have a question, except do you plan on staying with us for a while?
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, so I've been in the business for 30-some years, and I've been with the Radisson Corporation for over 5 years now. New to the Bothell location for the last 5 years. I was down at the Radisson LTAC, which I started as director of sales down there, and then moved to assistant general manager, and then moved up here. They promoted me to GM of this property. And honestly, when they offered it to me, I was like, I don't know, it's a pretty small property. It's only 166 rooms. They don't do the volume that I'm used to. And I really thought I was going to be bored. Man, was I wrong. Let me tell you that much. It's been crazy. We've just had a great summer. And to answer your question, I'm absolutely loving it. And unless something happened where the company comes in and says, hey, we have to move you, you don't have a choice, I'm planning on staying here.
Well, that's good to hear, and
Yeah.
thank you for stepping up, because your heads and beds is what funds our tourism. And so I appreciate you being willing to do that.
Well, thank you. And I think, just my background as well, as I've worked with, well, they're not necessarily called LTAC, but it's basically the same committee and other communities and stuff throughout the nation, as well as here in the Washington state. And I think, coming from a hotelier side is totally different than maybe coming from some other parts of the community to where, yeah, you can put on an event, but really is that the best use of funds? I understand what puts heads in beds and what's going to help. I mean, obviously, there's some where you want to see your own property grow, but it's not just about my property. It's about the community as a whole and anything that'll fill the town up, because that's really what it's about, right? It's getting that money, and not just from my property, but from all of the other 8 hotels in the area. So I'm very excited about it, to be honest with you.
I'm sold. Let's fill the town up. That sounds like a great idea. Councilmember Alders.
Just welcome. Thank you. Thanks for coming, and thanks for stepping forward to fill this role. I'm really looking forward to you staying busy.
Yeah, well, I am too. Trust me.
All right, I don't see any other hands up for questions. Bob, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you serving. Thanks for coming and introducing yourself to us.
Great. Thank you. You guys have a great evening.
You too. Thanks, Danae. All right, next up, we have council committee reports. Council members? All right, this one's going to go fast. Next up, we have...
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
We skipped over the city manager report.
We did that on purpose.
Yeah,
Oh, we did?
but yeah, that's all right. I don't have anything tonight. We'll just add to that last topic, is you'll recall from September, though, too, that tonight, again, no action requested in terms of appointing Mr. Sulkosky, but we'll give you a chance to reflect and bring forward a motion at a future meeting if you choose to appoint him.
Fantastic, thank you. Next up, visitor comment. The city has accepted visitor comment in writing, as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. City clerk, do we have anybody signed up to speak?
We do not, and I don't believe there's anybody in the audience that has signed up to speak either. If you'd like to speak, you're more than welcome to step to the podium, give your name, and you have 3 minutes.
All right.
There are none.
Projected agenda discussion. Anybody on council have anything they would like to bring up for a future agenda? All right. Consent agenda, I would entertain a motion. Councilmember Zorns?
I just moved. I mean, twitched. I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Zorns and a second from Councilmember Alders to pass the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil? Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with Councilmember McNeil absent and excused.
All right. So the first agenda bill of the evening is a public hearing. We're going to Agenda Bill 22135, the public hearing to consider adoption of resolution approving the 2023-2029 Capital Facilities Plan. City Manager Stannert?
Thank you, Mayor. We are making record time. I presume we might see some staff scrambling around to get into position, but we like that progress. At this point, I can finally say good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the City Council, and welcome Councilmember Dodd. It's exciting to have you here. And I would just say really quickly as we tee up this public hearing, as you'll recall, the staff was here before you in a study session on September 20th and going over the recommended CFP. And so tonight we'll hear if there's any comments, and council will have the opportunity to approve it, which then helps it get tied into the overall budget, and we can make sure that numbers add, which is always a great thing. I'll also just note that the timing ended up being pretty well, because while Councilmember Dodd is new, for anybody who's watching at home, there is a committee that actually supports the this project. And so we had 3 council members serving on that, and then we also had other members too. And Councilmember Dodd, in her role as planning commissioner, has been following this along. So we're pleased to have your voice now in another capacity. With that, I'm going to turn things over for a brief introduction before the public hearing is opened to Gretchen Zundell, which I will note too that as we have some transition in the finance department, Gretchen has been one of the people who has stepped up and is serving as our interim deputy director. So it's a note of thanks to Gretchen for her leadership and for leading us in this presentation this evening. So Gretchen, please take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. It is nice to see all of you. We are here to talk to you about the 2023-2029 Capital Facilities Plan. Development of the CFP is a complex and lengthy process because of the enormous amount of information and coordination involved. CFP Planning Committee members met 3 times, May 24, July 28, and September 8. They reviewed the community engagement data, discussed proposed projects, and their priorities relevant to identified funding sources and amounts, with the result being the proposed CFP in your packets tonight. From June through July, a community engagement effort was made to all city boards and commissions, the public, the city council, and city staff. It is an essential component in the preparation of a successful capital facilities plan. City of Bothell received 1,500 unique visitors, of which 1,100 filled out the online survey. There were also 331 open-ended responses to the very last survey question. The open-ended question was intended to serve as a follow-up to the prior question about what residents' top 3 priorities are for capital projects. On September 20th, City staff presented CFPPC recommended 2023-2029 CFP to the City Council via a study session. Tonight, City Council provides opportunity for public review and comment via a public hearing, and then has the opportunity to consider and discuss the proposed CFP further. City staff is asking the City Council to consider adopting the 2023-2029 Capital Facilities Plan that was recommended by the CFP Planning Committee. This CFP contains 85 facility, park, transportation, and utility projects for the city. The $479 million CFP incorporates 85 projects over the 7-year planning period. Here are donut charts which display the 2023 through 2029 summary allocation of estimated funding sources on the left and capital spending on the right. 51%, or $200 million of $479 million, is funded by non-city resources such as grants, sound transit, developer contribution, mitigation fees, and non-city compensation. What this means is that for every dollar being spent on capital projects, only 49 cents is city money, such as real estate excise tax, impact fees, and special levies. Bothell 23-29 CFP is a coordinated citywide effort that has vast impact on the community and its livability. It represents a significant investment into the Bothell community's long-term vision by bringing major capital projects to fruition. Facility projects. Fire Station 42 and 45 are being completely replaced by new and modern stations. Shop 1 building is also being replaced. Park projects. Design, construction, improve, and acquire existing and future parks for active and passive recreation. In addition, an emphasis of early planning and design relating to several projects will guide future CFP planning efforts. Transportation projects. Continue to work on existing projects until completion. Fund existing operating programs to pre-pandemic levels, with funding increases to the comprehensive plan, transportation element efforts, and the bike program, and prioritize multimodal transportation projects. Utility projects. Bothell is committed to maintaining and improving its utility infrastructures in order to preserve the existing systems, gain efficiencies, and accommodate anticipated growth. Thank you for your attention. Now we are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Aldrich.
I just want to thank you for this really thorough overview. And it's a really good introduction to like the meat of what we're going to discuss later. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Councilmember Zorns?
Just a comment. The sum total of this work represents hours that I can only imagine and skill sets that I can only imagine that staff had to bring in to organize and thoughtfully put together for the Capitol Facilities group to talk about. And I so very much appreciate the thought, made our job so easy, almost made me feel like I was skating, that I should be working harder. And I know the reason I didn't have to work harder is because you guys did your job so very well. So I have to thank you for it. It's very thoughtful and comprehensive in as much as we're working within our limitations. We can't do it all, but within our limitations, it's a phenomenal piece of work. And thank you to all of staff for putting that together.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mankey?
Just wanted to echo what Councilmember Zorn said. I know this is a huge lift for staff to put together. I appreciated all the work that you did. Being part of the committee was a great experience. It was great to see everything that was brought forward, give feedback, work with other committee members, and I'm very happy with what we landed on for the next several years. So I just want to say thank you for all your hard work that you put into this. I know it was a long pull this year, especially in a budget year. It's difficult to do both simultaneously, but thank you again for all the work, and I'm excited to support this.
Thank you.
The deputy mayor motioned to me, so I think I will take my turn.
Do it.
Okay. I just wanted to also echo what Councilmembers Zorns and Menke said. I was there as a member of the Planning Commission, and staff was super helpful, explaining a lot of things that we are not experts in. The work was obvious, and the meetings were really fun. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, staff. Last week was amazing. I still can't get over the sewer pipes, clean ones. So those are awesome. Thank you, staff. Thank you to the committee members who went through this, because I'm sure it wasn't also easy. And then last week we had a good round. I'm really glad that we're focused on, included a couple of community, at least one, the East Riverside, because we know that was a big one. So listening to the community and putting that in, and parks. There was a lot of parks projects that we're planning for the future. So I hope we can make those happen here very soon. And thank you. I appreciate it.
After a couple of the Capitol Facilities Planning meeting and the last time this came up, I have no questions that I have not already asked repeatedly. And I'm usually up for hearing Boyd talk nerdy to me a little bit. So like, I like that, but I don't think we need more of that right now. So just, again, all my thanks to staff for putting this together. I really appreciate the direction that you guys brought to us in a few different things. I feel that the policy direction that we gave was very heard, and I'm excited for this. I'm excited for the direction this is going. And I neglected to open the public hearing earlier, so I will open the public hearing now. City Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. We do not have anybody signed up to speak at this public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to, you're welcome to the podium for 3 minutes. Oh, come on.
Got it. I'm a musician. I'm supposed to know this stuff. I live on Riverside Drive. I spoke with Ms. Zorn during the campaign cycle, and the subject of the sidewalks there came up. So it's a tiny little request and a huge project, but I think it all fits in there somewhere. The last thing I heard was some problems in dealing with not ownership, but something to do with the land between the city and the county, who owns what, who's responsible, and where the money comes from that. Is there anything new on that front?
City manager, do you have something to respond with there?
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to, if there's anyone else who wants to speak and then respond to questions. Okay.
I'm not seeing anybody.
Steve Morikawa is online with us tonight, and I believe he can update of where Riverside Drive plays into this plan. Steve, are you with us?
Steve, we can't hear you. Are you muted? Not showing that you're muted.
We also have Public Works Director Aaron Lanhart here, who I think can fill in until Steve maybe gets audio going and maybe can fill things out. So, Aaron, I know you're over my shoulder. Do you want to speak?
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. So the latest that I have heard is that staff are meeting with King County regularly. So King County is the owner of the right-of-way that the city, hopefully in partnership with the county, would build the trail upon on East Riverside Drive. It's on the north side of the street. So staff are working on that, and it is incorporated into the capital facilities plan, at least with some planning funds in the early years.
Thank you very much. I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Mankey?
I move to adopt the resolution approving the 2023 through 2029 capital facilities plan.
Second.
Like a pro. All right, I have a motion on the floor from Councilmember Mankey and a second from Councilmember Dodd to move the recommended action. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Councilmember Zorns?
I just want to say that the East Riverside Drive is a big deal, and I'm just very grateful that it's a project that's in the pipeline, and I'm very eager to see some relief on that street. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, I think you've got unanimous support up here for that project. It's just a matter of finding money for it now, so we'll keep you in the loop. All right, City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with Councilmember McNeil absent and excused.
All right, all right, we're going to take a 10-minute break right now. It is 6:45. We are going to come back at 6:55.
Recording stopped.
All right, welcome back. Next up is Agenda Bill 22135. Oh, no, that's what we just did. It's 22136, consideration and discussion of draft 2023-2024 legislative agenda and policy manual. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm pleased tonight to introduce Shelley Helder of Gordon Thomas Honeywell Government Affairs. Shelley has been working with the city for quite some time, but over the course of the summer, did individual briefings with council members to hear about some of the interests that coming up in the legislative session, and also worked with a number of our executive leadership team members as well to be able to put some different thought and some specificity around some of the guides. What's before you tonight is a study session to look at drafts of this work. And so with that, as always, I'll remind you that no action is sought tonight. This is an opportunity to have a discussion about the drafts, refine them, make them the full councils, as this will be your first touch and opportunity to be able to have that conversation together. And then the intent is that Shelley will take your feedback, make some edits, propose back to you, I believe at our first meeting in November for potential adoption, which puts us well ahead of the legislative session coming up. Hopefully I didn't steal all of her thunder, but we'll find out. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shelley, who's joining us online, and welcome.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. As City Manager Stannard said, I am Shelley Helder, and I have the privilege of serving as the city's state lobbyist, assisting you all in advancing the city's priorities at the state level. And I'm here this evening to help the city prepare for the 2023 legislative session. Tonight, I'm going to briefly review the city's outcomes from the 2023 legislative session. I'll outline some expectations for the 2023 legislative session. I'll describe the city's draft legislative agenda and draft policy manual, and then I'll wrap up by talking about some of the next steps. And following this presentation, I welcome your input on these draft documents. The city has been really fortunate to have a strong track record of legislative success, and the 2022 session was no exception. It was a short session. The legislature was focused on adopting supplemental budgets, which make minor adjustments to their biennial budgets. And that means there was limited time and limited money. Despite those realities, the city was able to accomplish all of its priorities. We ensured that the $450 million financing gap for the improvements on 405 were addressed, which allows for the timely completion of the North End improvements to support bus rapid transit. We secured $7 million for the Bothell Way multimodal project. The city received $500,000 towards the final section of the North Creek Regional Trail, and the city was awarded $250,000 towards the Transportation Demand Management Program at Canyon Park. And none of these outcomes would have been possible or would have occurred without the leadership and dedication from the First District legislators. The city really is fortunate to have Senator Derek Stanford, Representative Shelley Kloba, and Representative Davina Dorr serving. So looking ahead to the 2023 session, it will be the first year of the two-year biennium, and it's scheduled to last 105 days. The legislature will develop their new biennial operating, capital, and transportation budgets and consider thousands of policy bills. The outcome of this upcoming November election will determine the political split of both chambers. It is anticipated that Democrats will maintain the majority in both the House and the Senate. Due to a number of retirements, there will be over 20 new legislators, which is a pretty significant turnover. After the November election, each of the major caucuses will select their leadership, and the majority party from each chamber will identify the chairs of each of the committees. Transitioning now to the city's legislative program. Bothell has two documents that guide state legislative engagement, the legislative agenda and the policy manual. Because the state operates on a 2-year cycle, we advise clients to adopt their documents in a manner that aligns with that 2-year cycle, and then to make amendments to those documents as needed in the second year. So the legislative agenda is a single-page document. It lists the city's top 3 to 5 priorities for the biennium. And the purpose of having a legislative agenda is to have a focused list of priorities, both for city staff and for your state legislators. The legislative process is really fast-paced, and thousands of policies are being discussed, and that stretches legislators' time and attention. And so if a legislative agenda is lengthy and has a dozen different priorities, the attention and the focus is divided, and the likelihood of success decreases. So a well-crafted legislative agenda is often the difference between whether or not a client is successful in achieving their legislative goals. And then viable priorities also consider the current political environment and are issues that have the greatest and most direct benefit to the city. The second document is the policy manual, and this lists the city's position on various state policies. And it's intended to be a guidance document that allows me, as your advocate in Olympia, to engage on issues that would positively or negatively affect the city. So as I mentioned, there's thousands of bills introduced, and oftentimes they impact city operations. So the policy manual lists the issues where we would testify, where we would participate in coalitions, we would join meetings with legislators as part of broader efforts, but not necessarily issues where we're the go-to lead on the advocacy. For the policy manual, I remind clients that there are some issues where the city of Bothell weighing in has an impact. For example, it has a direct impact on the services that the city provides. But then there are other areas where the city weighing in has less of an impact because it doesn't directly intersect with city services. The draft legislative agenda and policy manual in your packet this evening were developed based on the input received through individual meetings with council, as well as key department staff. So these are the draft 2023-24 legislative priorities for the city of Bothell. The first priority is a funding request for a crisis receiving center in North King County. This is a project that is being advanced along with the neighboring cities of Kirkland, Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, and Shoreline. And all those cities through the North Sound Radar program identified a gap in service within the existing crisis response system. Currently, there is nowhere to take someone who is in a crisis other than the emergency room, a jail, or if there's capacity, an inpatient treatment facility. The crisis receiving center will be a no wrong door facility. It will accept walk-in patients, help stabilize them, and connect them to community-based care. The facility is estimated to cost about $14 million, and Connections Health Solutions, which is the service provider that's been identified by the 5-city group, has been pursuing state grants, and one is already secured. But even with those grants, there will still be an unmet capital need of roughly $4.2 million, and possibly a need for initial startup operating costs. We meaning the city of Bothell, would be advocating for the state to allocate funding to address that gap and, if necessary, the startup costs. The next draft priority is housing. And from my conversations with council and in recognition of one of the state's greatest challenges, it's clear that Bothell wants to be part of the solution to increasing more housing options. The housing crisis is complex, and so the solutions have to acknowledge that. In light of that complexity, there are kind of two broad categories that we could focus on and advocate for. The first is more funding for acquiring and constructing affordable housing that in reality the market is never going to be able to meet. The second is policies and incentives that increase private housing construction. And examples of that would be reforming the condominium liability laws or streamlining regulatory requirements. Of course, there's others. And then the Association of Washington Cities has convened a housing solutions work group, and they're developing proactive proposals for the 2023 session for the association to advance. That work group is comprised of city elected, and they have a balance of perspectives, particularly on the topic of zoning and local control. And they're wrestling with how to craft a policy that will move the needle for housing and be palatable to the majority of city members. So they're aiming to have recommendations in mid-November, and depending on the outcome of that, those could be policies that the city chooses to support as well. The next top priority is related to the Bothell Way multimodal project. This is going to provide a variety of improvements along Bothell Way to support transit services and make the corridor safer for pedestrians and bicyclists. And as I mentioned earlier, the city was awarded $7 million for this project in the recent state transportation package. But that package is a 16-year package, and none of the projects that the legislature funded were assigned a schedule of when to expect their funding. So in the 2023 session, the legislature plans to create that schedule and phase the funds for each project. So we would be advocating for the phasing of the $7 million to align with the project timeline in order to maximize the use of the federal funds that the city has secured. The fourth draft priority is also building upon the success of the last legislative session, where the city received $250,000 from the state to develop a transportation demand management program at Canyon Park. Unfortunately, the funds were allocated in the first year of the state's fiscal biennium, which ended on June 30th of this year. And due to the short time between when the funds were approved and when the fiscal year ended, the city was not able to use all of those funds. So we're requesting that the legislature reappropriate the remaining funds to the new biennium so that the full amount can be used for the program's development. And then finally, the city is committed to completing the cleanup of the contaminated properties in Bothell's downtown and is dependent on the state's investment in the Remedial Action Grant Program. So we would urge the legislature to continue funding the grant program and to adequately fund the staff needed to support that program. So the policy manual outlines the dozens of other issues that the city advocates for or against. And the draft document in your packet includes many topics that are perennial and come before the legislature in some form or fashion year after year. The positions in the manual were developed based on input from council members, as well as technical support from city staff. The document is organized alphabetically by subject area, and that's for ease of reference. For the sake of time this evening, I don't plan to review every statement in the policy manual, but I am eager to hear from you all about feedback that you have on that document. So I want to leave ample time for your questions and feedback. Before we get there, though, I do just want to wrap up with an overview of the next steps. So following tonight's discussion, I will work with city staff to incorporate the feedback you all provide and present hopefully final versions to you all for consideration at your November 1st meeting. And the goal is to have finalized documents before the busyness of the holidays so that we can brief the city's delegation before the start of the legislative session. We'll also want to do outreach and meetings with other key legislators as needed. The legislature is scheduled to convene for their committee days, November 30th through December 2nd. That's kind of the unofficial beginning of policy discussions for the 2023 session. And then, of course, the session begins on January 9th. And during the legislative session, I will be providing you all with routine written updates. So that concludes my presentation on the draft documents. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can see each other, and I look forward to your questions and comments.
Councilmember Aldrichs.
Mayor's good. He knows when we start going for the button to call on us now. Thank you so much, Shelley, for this overview and just for the organization of it. It's really important that we, don't have this giant comprehensive plan that tells us how we're going to respond to every topic that comes up, but that we are able to prioritize. And so I very much appreciate the priorities that you selected here, and I think the draft looks really good for the priorities. I know that my thoughts are more kind of digging into the policy manual with a couple of items that I'd like to see that maybe aren't like specifically spelled out or addressed, that maybe could be incorporated in some way. So first is under environmental, the environmental section. There's been a lot of conversations in our community about partnering with Indigenous tribes and strengthening our relationships with the tribes that ancestrally claimed this land and it lived on this land. So I know that the legislature is often addressing tribal relations for environmental projects. And so I don't see it necessarily represented here. I would love to see something about that. And I would want to hear from my colleagues up here about sort of what their values in partnering with local tribes would look like. But for me, I know that that some of the best mitigation efforts and habitat restoration and kind of conservation efforts are often done in partnership with local tribes, and that we can strengthen those relationships. So something along those lines, happy to hear from my colleagues on that. And then also in this might end up going into, okay, so it's down on public safety. We in Bothell, the state of Washington, is waiting to hear from the Attorney General specifically about a couple of the 8 Can't Wait police reforms. And I just want to brag about our police department that they've met 6 of the 8 Can't Wait reforms. And at least 2, I think the remaining 2 were actually kind of held up in the legislature or with the Attorney General. So to understand that my personal priority, what I'd like to see for the city is to adopt all 8 of those policies, whether it's done by the state legislature or done by our municipality. And I believe that the legislature is considering a use of force continuum that would be adopted for the entire state, and to know that not only do I want to see it adopted, I would also like to be able to evaluate the quality of that. 8 Can't Wait, for those who maybe don't know, is a project of Campaign Zero, which is to reduce the incidences of police brutality. And these are evidence-based recommendations that they have a panel of people who evaluate policy manuals from police departments and states across the country to determine whether the policy in the manual aligns with the reforms that are evidence-based. So we're doing great with 6. If the state is going to develop a use of force continuum, that is something that I know will have a robust conversation in this state. Bottom line, it should align with 8 Can't Wait. by the end of the legislative session, if it can't wait, can't say, yes, this aligns with our goals and values, then we probably failed as a state at achieving that goal. Those are basically the two sort of additions that I'd like to see in the policy manual. I really appreciate all of your work and effort. I think it looks really great. I do very much, as a council member, feel heard, and my perspectives included in this. So, and just to see how successful you were over the last year with our legislative priorities. So grateful to continue working with you and to the ones that you called out may sound very, budgetary and kind of on the boring side, but that's how we get things done. And so I appreciate your continued effort in those areas. Thanks.
Councilmember Mankey, you're looking at me. Does that mean you want to speak?
I guess I can go next. Thanks, Shelley, for all your work on this. I don't have a whole lot of feedback because you did such a great job with it. My only question that came up was in regards to the TDM listed on the main policy points that we want to work on. I'm wondering, is that significant enough to put in the top 5? I know TDM is very important. I know we received some funding from the state for our first TDM program, but I just in thinking about what is important to the community and what I've heard feedback on a lot, one of those things is public safety. And I know there's a lot that you can dive into there, but two things that really come to mind and that have been brought up as I've frequented businesses and just spoken with people, especially in the Canyon Park area, has been around both the Blake decision and police pursuit. Of course, police shouldn't pursue every vehicle, but I think we've seen the number of pursuits skyrocket quite a bit in the last year since the current legislation was put into place. I know there's a bipartisan effort in the Snohomish County region around asking the state to look at that. The number of auto thefts have doubled, and part of that is because they know they can just drive away. And I think that really needs to be looked at. And I think we also need to consider how can we help with the Blake decision? How can we help get people the treatment they need without condoning, use of drugs? We're seeing drugs increase in our city and just across the region in general, and that's something that needs to be addressed. I believe above a TDM type program. So I don't know if there's support on this council for advocating for those things, but I think they are very important to our community, and I would love to see them added to this list or replacing the TDM. I don't know if we want to have a discussion around how we want to approach that or not, because I know there's probably varying levels of support or non-support for things like police pursuits and around the Blake decision itself. But I think we should all acknowledge that the current legislation that's on the books is not working as intended. I believe it's a step in the right direction, but not working as intended. And I think we can advocate and support work in that area, especially given that other communities in our region are supporting that together in a bipartisan way. I think that just goes to show that it's not working right. So that's the feedback that I would have.
If you want to talk, put your thing on so I see it go up, because everybody looks at me and I'm never sure what does that look mean. Councilmember Zorns?
Okay, so I haven't prepared anything, and if I start to ramble and ricochet, it's what I do. Councilmember Mankey, I agree with you. I'd love to see public safety. I mean, when you talk about bipartisan concerns, public safety is the top concern, public safety in the economy. And so anything that we can make as a priority for a more balanced way for pursuits, we need the pendulum to modulate and be at a more center place. So I would like to see pursuits. I would like to also see, and I think this is also tied in somewhat with, I was trying to figure out with, our legislative agenda, could any of these concerns be tucked in there? Crisis Receiving Center, anything that makes substance, drug addiction more proactive and less just kind of swept under the out of sight, out of mind policies would be great, because the Blake decision has created or has been part of creating in my opinion, more of an addictive, enabling kind of approach. So anything that would find a way to address addiction directly or possession that feeds addiction directly would be fabulous. And then you said that AWC has a work group that's going to be meeting up about housing. Are they going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us, where we can come along the line and chime in and say that, yes, we agree with those things? You said they're going to be doing that in November. Will they have resolved that in November? Come up with
That is the goal, that they would have specific proposals that will move the needle for the housing crisis, and that those proposals will have been vetted through other housing stakeholders.
Okay, and that might start the momentum going where we could weigh in on it as well. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then Councilmember Aldrich asked about tribal partnerships. Being on RIA 8, I know that they are very much involved and very much a part of the discussions of the health of our waterways. I don't know that we need to spell it out. I'm going to leave that for the collective mind here. I don't want to say that they don't have a place at the table, but how much in here do we want to start labeling different groups that are already active in that? Not that I don't want to discourage tribal partnerships. They were key in daylighting Horse Creek, and I don't think we could have done it without them. And then the 8 can't wait. I am going to defer to our police chief on whether or not he thinks that's something that we need to be as a council pushing, or are we making good progress on that? I know we only have only so much change that we can spend on this, and we need what we're asking of you has to be in the most productive areas where you can work your magic. You can't make everything better for us, but those questions were asked, and I'm weighing in on that. As simple as we can keep it to let you do your work, let's do that.
I don't want to double dip, but I have additional, tell me the protocol, because I can respond to a couple of the topics brought up.
Let's
circle back.
Let's tell you what, hold on to those thoughts. Let's see if Council Members Dodd and Deputy Mayor Alcabra have anything to say, and then we'll circle back.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Come on, you're new. You need to demonstrate your impact on the council.
She's been a council member for like hours, so
That's what I'm saying.
I'll cut her a break.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you, Sally. I appreciate this. I like, when I read the packet, I liked the crisis center. I know we're leading this, thanks to the chief and the regional folks in charge of making this happen. Housing, it's an important piece. As the new guy, got a little slap on the wrist, but it worked out in the end, because we moved in the direction that we need to move as a region for housing. We have a big housing shortage, and if we don't do anything about it right now, It's going to be a big problem in the very near future. It's already a problem. We talk about homelessness problems. I mean, we complain about homeless folks in there. Well, we need to help them and go down to the root cause. Multimodal. The TDM, I think it's fair to ask to move this to the next. I think it'll be a very small ask. It's like, hey, you know, you didn't give us the money in time. We didn't approve it in time. Can we just move it to the next few months later so we can actually use it? I agree. You know, you have 5 things listed here as for next year, the next couple of years agenda. If we get the 3 out of the 5, I think we'll be good. If we get 5 out of the 5, then that will be awesome. The biggest thing is housing, climate, which you have listed in our policy. We're making really good headway in public safety in terms of addressing root causes of issues and problems. I like where we're going with this, to be honest. So thank you.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thank you. I appreciate what everyone has said so far, and I agree with a lot of it. So I will highlight 2 things that really stood out to me that you guys haven't talked about yet. Under general government cybersecurity, if you read research papers on the security of municipal, county, state systems, it's really horrifying. So anything we can do to support that would be very welcomed. And completely different from that, density incentives under land use and planning would be super important. And obviously I'm only speaking for myself, but if we see another missing middle bill at the state level next year, I think we should throw our support behind that as well. It's a huge lift for local governments. And it's something that needs to happen. So thank you.
I have a couple things. I also wanted just to specify that we support the continued efforts to legalize middle housing statewide. I think we've got 4 folks up here that have been pretty outspoken about that, so I think that's something the council would probably like to see. The question on the crisis center, is there a movement or is there a way that we could add language to encourage the state on workforce development for people that work in that field? I know that's something the chief has talked about a lot. Is that part of the conversation at the state level at this point in time?
Specifically regarding the crisis center or behavioral health workforce in general?
Behavioral health workforce development for people that would staff a crisis care center or radar or that kind of thing.
So yes, in 2 ways. One, the state has made really significant investment in UW Behavioral Health Hospital to kind of create a new pipeline for training for behavioral health workers. And then just last session, there was kind of a training program created for the co-responder program that would hopefully create a pipeline of workers for the radar program, the radar navigators. So yes, I guess the answer to your question is the state is making strides in that direction, but that doesn't mean that they're done. We could definitely add a statement. I think it could be incorporated into the priority around the crisis receiving center, but I do think what you're getting at is broader than just the crisis receiving center, and so maybe more appropriate for a statement in the policy manual.
Perfect. I think that probably makes sense. And you mentioned there's going to be scheduling from Move Ahead Washington, some of the transportation projects. Are there going to be different allocations and different projects added to that this year as well, or are we just looking at scheduling the list of allocated projects from last year?
That's a great question. At this time, our only indication is that they're going to be scheduling the projects that have already received funding. I caveat that with at this time because, of course, with the new legislature, they can make changes to the package that was adopted last session. I'm skeptical that that will occur. I think if there's unanticipated revenue growth in the transportation budget, then there's potential for new projects to receive new money. But at this time, it doesn't look promising for new transportation projects.
Okay, that makes sense. The question on TDM for Canyon Park, my only question, because this is important and I think it needs to be a priority of ours, if it needs to be a priority, since they've allocated that money in the past, like, is this something that we need to use a lot of capital on, or is this something that they're just going to kind of be like, oh, shoot, and then do it for a different year?
It's a good question. My hope is that it's going to be a, oh, shoot, let's fix that and reappropriate it. My only concern is that this is money for a transportation demand management program, and it was allocated in the operating budget. And when we first made the request, Senator Stanford led on this, and both he and I thought, you know what, let's ask. The worst thing they can do is say no. And we were both surprised when the operating budget funded a transportation project. And so there is the potential that asking for this reappropriation, it ends up on the radar of the operating budget writers, and they recognize, wait, this is not an obligation of the operating budget, and therefore should not be operating budget dollars. So I don't know is the answer to the question. Our delegation is already aware, and they're eager to work on it. But it's going to ultimately come down to the operating budget writers.
Okay, perfect. All right, I think that's all I've got for now. So I'm back to Councilmember Aldrichs.
Thank you, Mayor. I really do appreciate coming back around to me. A couple of my colleagues up here brought up the Blake decision and the housing work group. And I just want to point everybody to the AWC legislative priorities. That is front and center. Both of those are front and center in the AWC legislative priorities. And I can speak to the process of how that was done because I'm both a member of the AWC Legislative Priorities Committee as well as the Housing Work Group. And those have both been really, really interesting and enjoyable experiences to see so many cities coming together and being able to weigh in on these various topics. And so definitely the Blake decision is being very carefully considered across the state. It is going to have some robust conversation and contributions made by AWC specifically. The housing work group, the last time I met with that group, we are going to be just as surprised as everybody else by what is presented to us because there was a whole lot of this and this and this and this. We can't wait to see what you do with that and bring it back to us and see like how you kind of put that into something like tangible. So I too am looking forward to see what those recommendations end up being. But there was some robust conversations specifically around density incentives. Councilmember Dodd, I know you'd be interested in that, and around missing middle for sure. I do appreciate the mayor's point about the workforce development and crisis workers. So I would encourage your concept of adding some language into there. I think that would be a great addition to the policy manual. And one thing that Councilmember Zorns asked the chief, do you want to weigh in on what Councilmember Zorns asked about with the 8 Can't Wait?
I can. Let me pull this. So this is a topic of discussion that I've had with Councilmember Aldrichs for probably 2 years now. We've been working on this. The police department, again, with some assistance from Councilmember Aldrichs as well, we have reached 6 of the 8 The remaining two are a little bit more challenging because the State Attorney General's office is coming out with their use of force directive. And that goes in place at the end of this year. Departments are currently working with the Attorney General's office to come up with the wording of how this is going to work and how this is going to roll out. One of the challenges, the wording for 8 Can't Wait, they talk about a use of force continuum. It's an antiquated platform. We used it when I first started in law enforcement, and that was a long time ago, and it's changed. So some of that may just be wording with 8 Can't Wait. The other challenge is, I think the two that were outstanding with us is shooting at moving vehicles. 8 Can't Wait would like a policy that just prohibits that in all situations. I struggle with that because I think there are situations where a policy like that could be too restrictive. We've seen it with terrorist attacks or people driving cars into crowds, and we only have so many options to stop a threat. And when things are so restrictive, it puts my officers in a situation where then they could be held criminally liable if they violate that policy when they're trying to save somebody else's life or the lives of others. It's already, we have a policy in place where that is discouraged, that it's rarely effective, and I'm kind of waiting to see if that policy is going to work for 8 Can't Wait. Does that help?
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Are there any additional legislative remedies you think that will come out of or be in response to the Attorney General's recommendations, or is it really in the hands of the Attorney General at this point?
I would like to say I believe it's a collaborative effort from all the jurisdictions participating with them. They sent out their initial policy, and we've been kind of responding back to it with some of the challenges in wording, shalls versus more restrictive wording in there. I think we're going to make some pretty good progress as this rolls out. And frankly, it's going to take time. This is the first time I think the Attorney General's office has kind of delved into this kind of policy throughout the state. I like the idea of a policy that is consistent throughout the state or between agencies. I think that's helpful. But it's kind of a wait and see for me.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I have nothing more, but I am a total legislative policy nerd, so you catch me later, we'll talk more.
All right, deal. Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't hear a lot of feedback on my recommendation, so I just wanted to add a little bit more for council to think about. In terms of the pursuit legislation, so the number of drive-offs are up substantially, and that is as dangerous as a police pursuit, perhaps even more. Police are trained to pursue. They learn it in the academy, and they undergo quite a bit of training in that regard. When individuals who are stealing cars or committing crimes are driving off, they don't have that same training, and they just gun it. And I've seen it. I've ridden once this year, and I saw it at 160th. I saw somebody enter 405 at between 90 and 100 miles an hour. And once you see it, it's something else. So I think the number of increased drive-offs is counteracting what this law was intentionally looking to solve for. I think we really do need to support it. Same with the Blake decision. I know it's in the AWC policy manual, what they're looking at, but we're in a really unique spot in Bothell. We're at the intersection of two counties, several major highways and freeways, and so we actually do get quite a bit more drug activity in our area, as evidenced by the soda zones in Canyon Park. And I've never met anybody that said the personal use or the sale of fentanyl has been good for my community. And while I don't believe that those folks using individually should be winding up in jail, I do believe we need a system in place to help funnel those people to the right place, to get them the help that they need, the support that they need in order to cure their drug addiction. So I think we really need to look at that, and I think we we really need to add public safety to our list of 5 and really hammer home our support. The north part of the city needs it. I know it's happening in the south part of the city as well, because that's where the drive-off I saw occurred, actually, on 160th. So I'd really like some support from council on this item. I understand if you don't think it raises to the level of top 5, but I think TDM is one opportunity we have there to replace with something like this, public safety-wise.
You've got my support on it. It's something that's foremost in a lot of people's minds. It comes up in conversations. You know, neighborhood parties, people are concerned about it. Teachers in schools are concerned about it. I think it's a concern on a lot of walks of life, so you have my support on it.
All right, I don't see anything else. I'm pretty content with what we have in public safety and the legislative agenda. I know there are loud voices calling for that reform, and I don't feel the need to add our name to them. I'm confident that that will be part of the overall discussion at the state level, regardless of if we weigh in or not. And I think that's probably it for that topic now that I have finished talking. Shelley, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks probably with a final version.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have council conversations. And just go for it. I don't want to call on anybody for this.
Okay, it's fine. I miss that it's not summer anymore, although 80-degree weather in October is weird. If it holds for next week, I'd be okay, though. And also, I'm bringing cupcakes because it's my birthday, and thought that I would share with staff and council. I won't bail on you, I promise. So Bothell is famous for crows, and we're it's kind of becoming a thing. And I am very grateful that at the end of this month, spooky month, like my kids would call it, we are going to be able to celebrate our first annual Crow Festival. That is being sponsored by local business owner Jessica Drake at Room to Craft. I'm excited to see what she pulls together. It sounds like it's going to be spooky. There will be a masquerade going on, so people can dress up. I've definitely heard some calls for nightlife in Bothell recently, and this seems like a special event that the community, 21 and older, can look forward to, and I hope we can make it a tradition here in Bothell. Grateful that there is an event to look forward to. Even my 10-year-old the other day, we were in the car, mentioned something about the summer nights and like missing them and wanting them to come back, and like, are they going to come back next year? And that's just really cool, because if it's on the radar of the 10-year-olds, I feel like we made an impression. So, we can enjoy, also other spooky activities in the month of October. Susan, a member of our community, Susan Switzer, is hosting Sup Witches on the Sammamish Slough, which is inviting members of the community to dress up as witches, get your stand-up paddle boards or kayaks, and go on the slough together. So that's something else to look forward to. Trick-or-treating on Main Street with local businesses on the day of Halloween. So if there are other spooky related activities coming up, I'd love to hear about them, but those are the ones I know of.
I was gonna say I'm very excited to see the trick-or-treating come back. I have made plans now with 4 other families to meet up on Main Street. I'm not sure how I'm gonna swing that, but my kid is also very excited. So that'll be great. And when I was at the county council today for King County, they commented on Bothell's awesome Summer Night series. So I really hope to see that return as well. Also, hi, I'm new. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with me tonight. And I'm very happy to be here with all of you. So thanks.
I have nothing to add, but I think 2022 is the year for council birthdays falling. Because Ben, it happened to Ben, and tonight is his wife's birthday. And then your birthday is next week, and I'm a little later on, also on a Tuesday. So I appreciate you wanting to make a party of it.
Pinkabella has good cupcakes. I'll wait, I'll use an excuse when I can.
I'll just point out that my birthday was on a Tuesday. It was just on a 4th Tuesday. So
it does count.
I didn't ask you.
I just wanted to jump in and say congratulations. Welcome to council, Councilmember Dodd. I look forward to working with you, and glad you could make it tonight, a couple hours after your appointment.
I'm going to say the same thing. Welcome. Happy to have you up here on the dais. And I'm glad we're whole again. All right. Let's adjourn.
Recording stopped.